Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Bold predictions for this Nebraska program heading into 2024. One of the more fascinating conversations that you can have during the offseason where, we all get the opportunity to call our shot heading into 2024, whether it's breakout players, whether it's big wins in certain moments on this schedule. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. I know every single Nebraska fan has some sort of bold prediction. Throw it down in the comments section. We'll chop it up there. I learn a ton from you guys in the comments section. I appreciate all the support that you guys have shown the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. The support from the Nebraska fans, we say this all the time. You guys continue to show a ton of love to the boys. We appreciate that more than you know. So if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into our first bold prediction. That is Nebraska starting this season 7-0, a conversation that's gotten a lot of buzz. And you kind of look at the first 7 games and say, Nebraska probably going to be favored in every single one of those games. Now, there are certain games we have to talk about. You start up at home against UTEP. If Nebraska is anywhere near as good as we think they are, that should be a double-digit win. Colorado at home week 2. That's one of those games that I certainly have circled where, look, I think Colorado made some really good improvements heading into 2024. I think Nebraska made a lot of improvements as well. I think both of these teams have gotten better since they played early 2023. Obviously, it's going year 2 with both coaching staffs. I think Nebraska at home at night certainly has a great shot at winning that football game. I believe they're 6-point favorites as we stand right now. Then you go NIU at home, Illinois at home. Both games are games I favor Nebraska in, and they're both in Lincoln, Nebraska. You feel pretty good about a 4-0 start. You go on the road to Purdue. Should be a win. I'm not very high on Purdue. And then you have Rutgers at home, a game that we normally don't have circled in our college football schedules. This Rutgers team is going to be extremely salty. They're going to run the football. They're going to play good defense. Greg Schiano kind of building that Rutgers program very similar to how Matt Rhule wants this Nebraska program to look. And I kind of look at your 2 toughest games in the first 7. It's Colorado, it's Rutgers, but you both get them at home. I think that's massive. And then you go on the road to Indiana. Obviously, coaching staff turnover, a lot of new players on that roster. I think Indiana got better in the transfer portal, but I think Nebraska takes care of business on the road there. You only have 2 games where you're not playing in Lincoln, Nebraska. Your 2 biggest games of the first 7 are going to be in Lincoln. I think there's a lot of reason to believe that this Nebraska team starts 7-0 in the 2024 season. I think that's a massive storyline. What have we said for the last couple of years with this Nebraska program? They just need to get that feeling of winning football games. The last couple of years, we know this Nebraska team has been extremely good. Obviously, on the scoreboard, it's been competitive, just not winning those big games, not kind of playing their best football in the big moments. I look at Nebraska going into 2024, and if they can start 7-0 and just kind of establish that winning culture, get this roster used to winning big football games when it matters most, I think that might be the most important ingredient for Nebraska to have a successful season. If they do start 7-0, that's how you get that winning culture. That's how you get the ball rolling and kind of start expecting to win some of those games. I think Nebraska certainly could start 7-0. I think they're going to be a favorite in every single game until they play Ohio State, their 8th game. Give me Nebraska starting 7-0 in the 2024 season. Going to number 2, I want to talk about the rushing attack. Gabe Ervin, leading rusher for this Nebraska program. Ton of different ways you could go about this, right? You obviously have Ramir Johnson and Emmett Johnson coming back. Ramir Johnson coming back from injury, I think, is a fascinating offensive weapon. And then you bring in Dante Dowdle in the transfer portal. This Nebraska running back room is extremely deep, which is one of the bigger changes that we saw in 2023, where the depth of the running back room was just a disaster, right? Whether it was injuries with Gabe Ervin, Ramir Johnson going down, or Anthony Grant not holding on to the football, Nebraska wanted to run the football a lot, and they really lacked that running back depth. I think that's one of the reasons to believe in this Nebraska program. Now, why do I go to Gabe Ervin as being the leading ball carrier, the leading rusher for this Nebraska program? I look at Gabe Ervin and say this kid resembles how Matt Rhule wants to run the football. I get Emmett Johnson. he's going to get his touches. He played extremely well as a redshirt freshman in 2023. I'm high on Dante Dowdle coming over from the Oregon Ducks. I look at how Matt Rhule wants this offense to operate in terms of staying on schedule, kind of having those body blows to opposing defenses. Gabe Ervin's that guy. I think we all know what he looks like in the weight room, how he looks when he's carrying the football, when he's healthy. He's one of those punishing, bruising running backs that Matt Rhule wants to build his offense through. If Gabe Ervin stays healthy, I think he's the best running back in this running back room. But I think more importantly, he fits how Matt Rhule wants this offense to operate. You look at having a potential true freshman quarterback at the starting spot. You want to make sure you're keeping this offense on schedule. You're giving your true freshman quarterback a run game to work off of. I think Gabe Ervin is probably the guy that I trust the most in terms of keeping this Nebraska offense on schedule and having this Nebraska offense look like Matt Rhule wants it to look. Number 3, we have to throw in a bold prediction about true freshman Dylan Raiola, and I'm going to say freshman All-American. And I kind of looked back at the quarterbacks in the 2024 class and say, there's just not that many true freshman quarterbacks that are going to be starters in 2024. Dylan Raiola, I think we fully expect him to be the starter of this Nebraska offense. And a couple of different reasons why I'm a believer in Dylan Raiola. And I think it first starts with the pedigree. I mean, this was a kid that was born with the football in his hand, was born to play the quarterback position, has played a ton of football at the quarterback spot. You look at a lot of other freshmen coming in, maybe only 2-year starters at the high school level, not a ton of game experience. They might have the arm talent, but not necessarily the pedigree and experience. You look at Dylan Raiola playing some of the highest level high school football at Buford his senior year, operating in what was a very complicated offense at Buford. I think Dylan Raiola not only has the physical talent to play early as a true freshman, but I think he has the makeup between the ears to be a true freshman starter as well and have success. I think the second thing is reps. How many true freshmen are going to get more reps than Dylan Raiola during spring practice and fall camp? There's just not many. Even if you're a true freshman that is trying to compete for a starting position, you're probably starting off QB3, QB4 in the depth chart and working your way up. I mean, Nebraska's only got 3 guys on scholarship in the spring practice session. Dylan Raiola was probably treated as the quarterback 1 for the duration of that spring practice. I think Dylan Raiola has a lot of reps under his belt with this Nebraska offense. I think that certainly helps. And then I think it's a good situation. I look at the offensive line and say there's a lot of experience. There's a lot of continuity up front. You look at the pass catcher room, Jamal Banks, Isaiah are 2 veteran wide receivers that have played a lot of football. You're going to have solid tight end play. You're going to have a solid run game. It kind of has all the ingredients for a true freshman quarterback to come in and have a lot of success as well. Going to number 4, we're going to go to the defensive side of the football and kind of just shout out who the boys have, kind of been banging the table for all offseason. That's middle linebacker, Javin Wright. I think it's probably the position group that we have the most question marks about heading into 2024. I think you have a stud in Javin Wright, and I'm going to go with him leading this team in tackles in the 2024 season. One, this kid's super rangy. You can do a lot of different things with him. It's really rare to have a linebacker that checks as many boxes as Javin Wright does from an athleticism standpoint, going sideline to sideline, dropping back in coverage. Again, this was a kid that came into Nebraska as a 6'3", 190-pound defensive back. He's continued to put weight on the frame during his career, moving closer to the football. He's a veteran that's been in this program since 2019. He's a guy that I think is going to put it together, again, between the ears at that linebacker position. I think a lot of what Javin Wright maybe struggled with during the 2023 season had nothing to do with the physical traits that he has. I mean, he has all the athleticism to be one of the better linebackers that we see in the Big Ten. I think he just needed to put it together, get a little bit more experience at that off-ball linebacker position. I think having a full offseason at that spot, kind of being what I would expect to be the leader of this Nebraska defense in the second level, I think Javin Wright's going to have a phenomenal year. I think he could be an all Big Ten caliber guy, but I think he leads this Nebraska defense in tackles. Going to our number 5 bold prediction, 3 all Big Ten defenders. And I think this is a massive storyline for Nebraska where you look at this depth chart and say, this is a very, very complete team. And I think the question mark is in terms of what Nebraska can do in 2024 is how many of these guys go from good to great? I mean, you look at this Nebraska defense and say it was very good in the 2023 year, but they didn't have a single NFL draft pick. And so you look at where Nebraska might be leaving some stuff on the table is that elite talent, some of those game wreckers, guys that can take over games, make those game-changing plays on the defensive side of the football. It is, at least in my mind, a laundry list of guys that could be all Big Ten defenders. You look at Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmaker, Cam Lenhard, Prince Will Hugh. I mean, all of those guys have the capability of being dudes. Obviously, we know what Ty and Nash are. I think what excites me the most about Cam Lenhard and Prince Will Hugh is we saw really good things as true freshmen. Can they take that step going into year two? I'd probably throw in Jamari Butler into that list as well. We just talked about Javin Wright at the linebacker spot. You look at the back end and say Isaac Gifford, Tommy Hill, Bly Hill coming back from injury, Malcolm Hartzog, Marcus Buford Jr., Deshaun Singleton, all guys that are really good football players. I think the question is, can Nebraska on the defensive side of the football take all of these good players at all of the levels of this defense and say, can you go from being really solid football players to great football players to NFL draft picks to all Big Ten defenders? I think that's the question that I have for this Nebraska defense. And when you have that many guys that are good under a coaching staff that I really do believe in terms of player development, that's kind of something I feel good about. Is a bunch of these guys, the 10 guys that we just talked about, can they go from good football players in 2023 to great football players, all Big Ten players, and NFL draft picks? That's one of the questions that I have about this Nebraska program. That's kind of where I see Nebraska taking that step in the 2024 season. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.